Greetings to our fellow colleagues and to Mrs. McIntosh. We are Group F and we are here to tell you all about restorative justice in a fun, informative way. Our team comprises of Mia Archibald, Desiree Ramnas McDonald, Esther Bethelmy, and myself, Talina Rivers. Before we start, let's get familiar with restorative justice.
When a crime is committed, people are hurt. No matter what kind of crime: theft, vandalism, break and enter, harassment, intimidation, armed robbery, physical assault, homicide. Every situation is unique, but that doesn't mean you're alone. Restorative justice can help. Restorative justice is an approach that focuses on addressing the harm caused by crime, meaningful accountability, and meeting the needs of the people involved through safe and voluntary dialogue. Restorative justice processes provide a safe way for victims, offenders, community members, and others affected by a crime to talk about what happened. Victims can explain how the crime affected them and ask questions like, how did this happen? Why me? Is it going to happen again? What's going to happen to the person who did this to me? How do I go on from here? Often, offenders wonder, what can I do to repair the harm? How can I make things better? What does the victim need from me? The process helps offenders understand how others were affected by their actions and take responsibility for those actions, for the harm they caused, and for repairing that harm. RJ processes are voluntary, inclusive, and flexible. They can take different forms and offer different levels of involvement. These processes are guided by a skilled facilitator who will create and maintain a safe, sensitive, and respectful environment for participants to communicate in an open and honest way. People who have participated in a restorative justice process have experienced reparation, recognition, understanding, empowerment, improvements in health and well-being, positive change, and forward movement.
I expected to be repulsed by a pathetic attempt to say sorry. I hoped to find a young man recovering and taking full responsibility for what he did. I received more than I could have wished for when I came to realize that he truly wanted to take back his actions.
I found the experience good. It made me look at the effects of my crime towards the victims and how it made them feel. I have a true understanding that my actions do cause harm and have long-term effects for the victim.
There are hundreds of RJ programs across the country, and thousands of criminal cases go through these programs every year. Visit csc-scc.gc.ca/restorative-justice.
And just to add to the video, restorative justice is a type of ADR method. ADR meaning alternative dispute resolution. And this method dates back as early as the 1400s. And the ADR is any means of settling disputes outside of the courtroom. So you wouldn't have ADR inside of the courtroom. And just to bring it back locally a little bit, going back in time, the Trinidad and Tobago signed on to the ADR movement in New York City in 1966. Moving along to the jargons that are associated with restorative justice, especially what we are about to speak about today. So we have community, we have acceptance of guilt, relationship, repairing harm, impact, needs, victim, and perpetrator. So the community is not really the typical community that you will hear and you will know about, like a village or area. In this jargon, the community would mean that it is the staff, the student, and the family. That is the community in this restorative jargon. So we have to recognize that the strength and the health of the community directly impacts, for example, a school, sense of belonging and connectedness of the students, and the academic achievement. However, every member of the community is important and contributes greatly. Each person's actions affect the health of the community in a positive or negative way. Okay, and moving along, the acceptance of guilt. That is basically claiming responsibility for wrongs done to others. Relationships is the relationship between the victim and the offender, the relationship between the offender and the community, and the relationship between the community and the victim, or however you want to make the connectedness. But it's basically positive relationships lay the foundation for cooperation, skill development, and learning. Reinforcing the importance of positive relationships is essential to the development of a strong community. Okay? And repairing harm. The importance of repairing harm when one's actions have negatively impacted the community is a critical component of the restorative community. When harm has occurred, giving those involved in the incident an opportunity to identify what they are going to do and how they are going to make it right. Okay? And the next one is the impact. So the impact is basically how it affected the parties and not only the victim. Sometimes the offender could have an impact, the community members could have an impact. In this case, when I want to talk about the parents, could have an impact. Okay? And moving along, the needs. When conflict or harm occurs, it is important to recognize all parties involved as having these needs. Oftentimes, the needs of those harmed and those who are harmed have similar needs. Giving individuals an opportunity to voice their needs is an important step towards identifying what must happen to repair the relationship. And lastly, the victim and the perpetrator. The victim is the person who was directly affected in the incident, because all the members of the community have some kind of impact or has been affected in some way, but the victim is the person who has been firstly and directly affected, and the perpetrator is the person who did the wrong. Here is a diagram representing the peace circles, the community conference, and the family group counseling as a fully restorative method, which is the yellow or the green in the middle. Moving out of that circle to the blue is mostly restorative justice, and those will be the victim support circles, the victim restitution, the victim offender mediation, the victimless conference, positive discipline, and therapeutic commitments. And to the orange, which is partially restorative, you will have the victim service, crime compensation, related to community service, youth, related to victim sensitivity, offender family service, and family-centered social work. So this is the diagram depicting all the various areas of how the level of restorative justice these programs have. Okay, so to show that the victim receives reparation, the offender holds the most responsibility, and that the community seeks to build relationships through reconciliation. The path to justice lies within problem solving and healing rather than punitive isolation. So in other words, the approach about restorative justice is not really looking at the rules being broken and then punishing the people for breaking the rules and punishing them for doing wrong. No, that is punitive. Coming out of that type of behavior and moving it towards a restorative, we want to restore communities, restore relationships, restore the harm done. So it's not looking at the rules that were broken, it's looking at the repair and how we're going to solve this problem. So over the years, a number of programs have been associated with restorative justice, and there's three out of many that they use to problem solve. So there's the victim offender mediation, which uses programs by trained mediators to bring victims and their offenders together in order to discuss the crime its aftermath, and the steps needed to make things right. Then you have circles, which is a very special one in our case, but you will find out a little later. So the circles are similar to victim offender mediation, but differ in that they involve not only the offender and the victim, but also their family members, school, community members, and even a government representative. And lastly, the conferencing programs are also similar to victim offender mediation, but it tends to be a little closely linked to the criminal justice side of the whole approach. But nevertheless, it is similar in its nature. But what makes restorative justice so worthy to be used? What makes it so beneficial to the members of the community and to the facilitators and to the victims and to the offenders? What makes it so unique? Well, restorative justice provides an opportunity for the victim to have a face-to-face platform with the offender and place a level of empathy and accountability on the offender, right? So implementing restorative justice will promote personal accountability, responsibility, and peaceful resolution through the use of mediation, peace circles, family and community involvement, and even restitution. Major part of restorative justice is the idea that both sides get to voice their concerns. That's a very, very major part about it. Both sides get to voice their concerns. But some other advantages include it reduces crime, violence, and bullying. It improves human behavior. It strengthens community. It provides effective leadership. It restores relationship. And, of course, it repairs harm. Where there are advantages, they must have disadvantages. Inadequately trained practitioners or badly executed procedures may make matters worse. Any perceived personal hostility on the part of the practitioner or the facilitator can result in the offender feeling resentment and unwilling to contribute, and he may also incline him or herself to act antisocial, so this must be avoided. Another disadvantage is that schools in particular lack resources like finances and equipment to properly enroll and roll out the proper restorative justice methods and programs and facilities. So that is a main thing, especially for this presentation, because many schools, they want to implement this procedure, but they're not getting the proper resources from the government. Okay? Moving along. Another disadvantage is that some offenders may pretend to be remorseful and deceive the practitioner into thinking that matters have been resolved, when in fact they just want to get away or run away from the real penalties. And lastly, being integrated in the school community may have little appeal to some children who bully, especially when their own social network provides them with more attractive support. Does restorative justice work best for all situations? Well, let's see. So, restorative justice works best in a school settings with school-related incidents. It also works good in a relationship between husband and wife, a girlfriend and a boyfriend, or even a friend, any type of relationship. It also works in workplace scenarios and situations. It works in juvenile justice. It works in a family setting, and also it works in the prisons. So those are the 6 main areas you'll mostly, not all, but mostly find restorative justice. Let's use a conflict scenario to really rule out how we can use restorative justice. So our group decided to use bullying in schools. But what is bullying? Well, bullying is unwanted aggressive behavior among school-age children that involves a real or perceived power of imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. Both kids who are bullied and who bully others may have serious, long-lasting problems. In order to be considered bullying, the behavior must be aggressive and include an imbalance of power and repetition. An imbalance of power is basically kids who bully, they use their power such as physical strength to access embarrassing information or popularity to control or harm others. Power imbalances can change over time and in different situations, even if they involve the same people. And repetition is bullying behavior that happens more than once or has the potential to happen more than once. Bullying includes actions such as making threats, spreading rumors, attacking someone physically or verbally, and excluding someone from a group on purpose. So we made up our own scenario to really show you guys how much we have an understanding of the restorative approach, and we're going to apply this scenario to the restorative justice approach to see what best method we can come up with or research to get a good resolution. So the players of our scenario are Keston Singh, he is the bully and he's 16 years old. Josiah Walters, he's a victim and he's 12 years old. Then you had another student who was a witness. Then Mr. Brent Khan, he was a school dean. Mrs. Julia Peters, she was a guidance officer. Then there was Mrs. Cheryl Bodo, she was a social worker / facilitator. Then I had Police Constable Ken Ali, who was the officer in charge of the Chaguanas Police Youth Club. Then there was Mr. and Mrs. Singh, those are Keston's parents. And lastly, there were Mrs. Sophia Walters, who is Josiah's mother. Outline of the scenario goes as follows. On Friday the 17th of April 2020, Keston Singh, a Form 4 student of Chaguanas North Secondary School, is known for being the school's bully, and he usually intimidates and demands other students to hand over their personal belongings. On one day in question, Keston approached Josiah, a Form 1 student, and demanded that he handed over his money, or if not, his bag. Josiah responded by saying he did not have any money. Keston became furious and grabbed Josiah's bag. He realized that bag was slightly torn and patched, so he angrily removed the patch and threw it back, only to realize it was destroyed, worse than it was before. Josiah picked up the bag and started to cry and ran straight towards the principal's office. We chose to use the conferencing method of circles, but this circles has an increasing support of policies and practices that gives the shift away from a more disciplined and a zero tolerance approach to a more disciplined focus where the teachers engage with the students and the students engage with their peers. So this effort, districts and states are rethinking discipline and adopting restorative justice practices as a form of bullying prevention, as a nationwide effort to provide schools, staffs, and students with a set of preventative and responsive strategies for supporting positive students' behavior. Mrs. Buru, the school social worker, intervened with mediation between the perpetrator, Keston, and the victim, Josiah. After the conflict above was reported by another student, Mrs. Buru saw it fit to use the restorative justice method to effectively deal with the bullying at hand. She approached both the victim and the offender, who agreed on participation in the restorative process. Their parents, as well as other persons deemed to be affected by the conflict, was summoned by the social worker to participate in conference on Monday, April the 22nd, 2020. However, over the weekend, the social worker prepared for the conference. She knew that preparation was imperative for achieving positive results in strengthening community relationships. She is a trained and certified facilitator with a bachelor's degree in social work and a master's degree in negotiation and conflict management with even 30 years of experience. So, on the day of the conference, the social worker, Ms. Boodoo, who now adopted the role of a facilitator, brought the group of people together in a circle. The circle consisted of the offender, the victim, the parents of both the offender and the victim, a guidance officer, the student who reported the incident as a witness, as well as the school dean, police officer, who is actually in charge of the Shogunas Police Youth Club. So he's not really a specific law enforcement, but he's more have experience in dealing with children, and he didn't came in with his uniform clothing as a civilian clothing, but he has more experience in dealing with children, so he's well trained in dealing with children. See? On that morning, Mrs. Boodoo, the facilitator, gave an opening statement. She said, "Good morning. I will be facilitating this session today. I am happy to see that all members of the community have made it today. It shows that we have something in common. Today, we will be preparing the harm done in the incident that happened on April 17, 2020. At the end of this conference, positive relationships will be built because it is very important to have strong and healthy community. But before we proceed with the circle conference, I kindly ask that we position all our chairs in a circular formation because it's really important that each one of you has the opportunity to share and look at each other. Community circles is a specific restorative approach that professionals use to rebuild relationships in schools while involving all who are infected. Bullying is a relationship problem that requires relationship-based solutions. Therefore, we will not be focusing on the rules, but rather healing the wounds inflicted. The facilitator began round one, and round one is basically about asking both sides of the story on what had happened. So we asked the victim, then they asked the offender, in our case the bully. And it also shows that is the first step to restorative, or the first step to the circle conferences method is the acceptance of guilt and the willingness to participate by the offender. Facilitator asks an icebreaking question for everyone in the community to answer. The question was, if you were given 3 free days from work or school, what would you do on those days? Well, after everyone answered, they seemed a little relaxed and everybody was engaging and talking to each other, and the whole situation wasn't so intense, and that is what she wanted. The facilitator was specifically trained to actually bring the whole crowd in at ease and at a relaxed state of mind. So the facilitator began the process by introducing herself and asking Josiah, who is the victim, what had happened. This was stage 1 of the process. Kestan Singh, the perpetrator, was subsequently asked the same question, so too as the witness. The facilitator proceeded to then ask Kestan if he accepts the guilt and is willing to repair his wrongs. And of course, Kestan said yes, he accepted and is willing. Both students were asked how they felt about the situation. Kestan's response helped us to gain more insight to why he bullied Josiah. Kestan said that he felt that he was taking out his frustration on his peers. He felt guilty and ashamed of his action, and he really wanted attention from his parents. On the other hand, Josiah said that he felt isolated, scared, and worthless, and was very ashamed what happened. And indeed, he really wanted to focus on his education. When it was Keston's parents' turn to talk, Keston's mother expressed her thoughts on the situation, and she spoke on behalf of her and her husband. So she said that she was very sorry for Keston's behavior. They were so busy trying to balance having two jobs and paying the bills, and sometimes Keston has to wait on them very late at night to come home. Keston even told them one night that he felt lonely at home and broke down in tears. In response, Josiah's mother said that she is very upset, and she was very upset that night when Josiah came home in tears because his bag was destroyed. She also indicated that it was very unfair since Josiah is a very kind and loving child, and he shouldn't have had experienced that situation. Upon hearing the situation, Keston and his parents looked at the police officer and he intervened. The police officer, Mr. Ali, said, "Whoa, that is actually against the law. To leave a child without supervision, this is also usually leads to juvenile delinquency. And the build of frustration can even make kids bully others in school. So probably this is why Keston was bullying Josiah in school." The facilitator reached round three, and round three was all about what can they do to fix the situation and ensure it doesn't happen again. And to add to all of that, PC Ali noted that it was best that Keston also joined the police club. He said that the main focus of the police club is to expose young people to productive activities in education, sports, culture, and other fun activities as an alternative to being delinquent. It also helps parents throw an extra eye on their kids while they are at work. He recommends that Keston join so that he will not be idle at home, and it will actually be an extra precautionary measure to keep Keston on the right track. The facilitator reached round 4 of the circle conferencing. Round 4 is all about accountability, monitoring, and follow-ups. The facilitator started round 4 by saying that she was very proud of the community because they have heard a lot of supportive decisions in the circle. Just to make sure that the harm was being repaired, Josiah and Keston will now say 3 good things that they know good about each other, then give each other a warm hug. And this is very important for building relationships within the communities, which is very important and actually theme of the circle conferencing. The boys hugged each other and they were very pleased about the decision. Josiah was pleased with the fact that his bag has been replaced, along with Keston was actually pleased to be having to join the youth club. So both children were actually satisfied about the outcome. And we have a quote here saying, "I'm sorry" is a statement, "I won't do it again" is a promise, and "how do I make it up to you" is a responsibility. And those are the responsibilities of obviously the offender making that statement towards the victim and towards the community members. So this is a breakdown of the process of strengthening communities, where 1 is a community, 2 is the offender, and 3 is the victim. So the community will be building relationships on the offender and the victim. They will be restoring relationships that were cut between the offender and the victim. The offender will have the responsibility of repairing his harm and being accountable towards the victim, and the victim will now be a sense of becomes compensated, and he will be satisfied with the process, which will indicate that the relationship has been restored. To recap, restorative justice is a form of alternative dispute resolution that seeks to restore the harm and hurt that was inflicted by the offender. In order to showcase this approach, a form of restorative justice method were used. The circle conferencing was used to resolve a bullying scenario in school. The first step towards a restorative approach is that the offender must accept guilt and be willing to participate. In the process of participation, most conferencing do end in an agreed restitution, which is paying back by compensation, which in this case, Keston had to repay Josiah his book bag. This ultimately shows that the offender holds accountability for the incident. It is only at this stage relationships can either be built or restored between offender and victim, and also community and victim. To close things off, I'd like to say special thanks to my colleagues and to Miss for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation. We learned a lot and was very informed about the research that we conducted, and we open the floor to take any questions via these email addresses below. You can ask us any question or further research or any concern that is saw within the presentation. Thank you.